have a retired officer actually heading a military position, the number one criteria here, Shiv, in this particular selection seems to be seniority.
It's a complicated issue, Akshita, and
Okay.
this government has demonstrated that seniority is only one criteria, even though it has been a laid down procedure for many years. Remember, it was the Modi government that actually created the position of Chief of Defence Staff. It was something that had been pending since as far back as the Kargil war. It was a recommendation by the Kargil Review Committee that India needed a Chief of Defence Staff, to unify the forces, and conduct, higher defence management and theaterization of the armed forces. Since then, no government had actually decided on doing anything like this. It was the Modi government that decided to bite the bullet, evolve consensus and form the Chief of Defence Staff. So, the issue of seniority, all of those other criteria have been pretty much work in progress. The government, remember, Akshita, has demonstrated that seniority is not necessarily the go-to criteria even in the selection of the army chief. Remember, General Bipin Rawat was selected over officers who were senior to him to become the chief of the army staff. There have been similar selections in other areas of the armed forces as well. So therefore, this government has made it clear that, laid down procedure doesn't necessarily need to be followed, when it comes to the merit of an officer who is to be assigned a position. And I'm assuming that that's pretty much what has been used here as well, because as far as the Chief of Defence Staff is concerned, you're talking about the senior-most officer, of the Indian military, Akshita, and therefore there's no elbow room for fooling around. Of course, there's going to be some questions that will need to be ironed out. This officer retired as a Lieutenant General. What will be the command and control, the inter-se seniority with other officers? Does he regain his rank? Does he become an active officer once again? All of those questions remain. But at this time, another bit of history. A Lieutenant General who was retired now becomes the senior-most military officer in the Indian Armed Forces.
Right, Shiv, Shiv, at this point, with the kind of information that's coming in right now, what you and Abhishek have been getting us about Lieutenant General Anil Chauhan, his credentials, obviously at this point, there's a lot of details that we await from the government on how things really function. But let's look at it from the aspect of the Chief of Defence Staff, the role, the challenges that he has also going forward with regards to the reforms and restructuring that's really needed.
Akshita, I'll quickly list for you some of those, priority areas that the new Chief of Defence Staff will have to look at. I just want to, out of interest, because our viewers will want to know about General Anil Chauhan a little deeper. He's a recipient of the Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Uttam Yudh Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Sena Medal and Vishisht Seva Medal. He's been a Director General of Military Operations. He's commanded the very sensitive 3 Corps in India's northeast. He's also had, several different staff and command appointments. He currently is the military advisor at the National Security Council, so he's still, in the power corridor, so to speak, as far as national security is concerned. To answer your question about the priorities in front of the Chief of Defence Staff, there are plenty. Remember General Bipin Rawat, when he passed away in that tragic accident, his plate was full of many different things that he was, planning to do to reform the armed forces. The Agnipath scheme was one of them. Theaterization, which is to, sort of optimize the different commands and structures of the armed forces in order to, to get the best out of them, make them more functional, not just about regions, but also about the kind of capabilities they have, so that the armed forces work together in a much more, a syncretic sort of way. All of those things are going to be number one on his plate. Number 2, Atmanirbharta. It's a big calling card for the Modi government to increase self-reliance of the government, of the armed forces, so that there is less reliance on foreign imports. That's going to be key result area number 2 for the Chief of Defence Staff. But overall, creating a much more agile military for the, for the Indian nation going forward into the future, all the new technologies that will have to be embedded into future soldiers and future warfare fighting capabilities are going to be the big priorities, Akshita. It is no easy task. He's going to have his hands full from day 0.